What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? Today we're talking to Objectively Dan. In case you guys don't remember, Dan was on my live show after the Faithless Forum, and I'm sure there will be a link somewhere where you can check out that particular discussion. But we are sitting down with him today to talk about his own religious past, because it's a pretty interesting one. And then we're gonna do like a little bit of retrospective, and then talk about some street epistemology things. So if you're interested in that, then please stay tuned.
Yeah. It's gonna be fun.
Objectively Dan, can I just call you Dan? Is that fine?
Dan is fine by me.
Awesome. Yeah. So Dan, now I'm kind of curious. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Just finishing up stuff with school, and getting ready for the summer. I'm doing summer classes too, but it's going.
Yeah, nice. Now, why don't you go ahead and start out by telling people kind of, I guess, your history, at least on YouTube and with atheism in general, because, which this will be linked down below if you want to go and watch more about it, but you actually had a run-in with Anthony Magnabosco that kind of really affected, like, your faith and whatnot, right?
Yeah, so I used to be a very devout Christian. I was involved with a college ministry and several other kinds of ministries. And I actually met Anthony Magnabosco while he was doing street epistemology at the college campus I was at the time. And we kind of had a nice, pretty long 30-minute conversation. And I never really forgot about that conversation. And I kind of consider it a stepping stone to how I am today, which is an atheist/secular humanist. And that was about 3 years ago now. And now I work with Anthony and I do a podcast with him, which you can find on the Street Epistemology YouTube channel. We're called Epistemic, and we talk about street epistemology and kind of how we can use it to better our conversations with people.
Awesome. I mean, I've caught a few of y'all's podcasts, and I have to say that I love sitting there and listening to you guys. It really helps inform me on how to have better conversations with people. So anybody watching, the links will be down below, but definitely go subscribe to Street Epistemology, watch their podcast, because it can really help you out. Now,
yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say our podcast is it's all in video form right now. We usually analyze YouTube videos and stuff, so you can just find it on YouTube. You can't find it on any other media right now. And we get lots of great guests on, just talking about street epistemology topics and stuff, or people that are related to it. So yeah, go check it out.
Yeah, like I said, it's awesome. All links down below. So now, Dan, we've got it chronicled, like basically kind of like what happened after your first interaction with Anthony. He's got that pretty well documented on his channel. So what I want to start out with today is like, what was it like, growing up as a kid? Were you always religious, or like, did you come into it at some point when you were a child?
Yeah, I grew up in a fairly religious family. We grew up in kind of a Methodist tradition. My dad was formerly Catholic until he met my mom, and then I guess he decided to be a Methodist to kind of make things easier. And so we kind of did that. And I went to a Baptist church in my teen years. And so I grew up in a mostly Baptist town as well. So kind of that kind of mindset, I guess. I was pretty involved with the youth group. Like I said, I did college ministry. I was a leader in my college ministry, and I also did camp ministry as well. I started off as a counselor, and I ended up becoming in a management position out there as well. So I was actually writing some of the programs for the kids. I wrote part of the Bible studies, and I spoke to the kids every week. I probably spoke to a couple thousand kids if you added it all up. For the time that I worked there. So yeah, I was pretty involved for a pretty long time.
Yeah. I mean, did you enjoy like what you were doing, or did you find it like tedious at times?
I got a lot of joy out of what I did. It was kind of tedious at times. Sometimes you go to church and it's kind of boring, and sometimes you're kind of having an expectation to do things you don't really want to do, and it's very PC at times. You can't say this, can't say that. But overall, I would say that I had a pretty positive relationship with what I was doing. Yeah.
Okay. So what was your favorite part of like doing like I guess like I guess the youth ministry and like the college kind of ministry? Like was there any certain portion of that that you really enjoyed?
I think looking back on it now, it was probably the humanist aspects of it. Really, it was just the idea of helping other people through tough situations and trying to give them wisdom and advice and encouragement to just kind of move through the hard times and to just kind of have a wonder for some things that we don't understand. I think I may have misplaced some of my trust in, obviously some of the things that I believed, in the supernatural and whatnot. But the best parts of it was the real stuff. It was the real sense of community that I had and the real sense of purpose. And I wouldn't take that back.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I totally
Mm-hmm.
agree. I mean, that was the best part that I found of my
Mm-hmm.
faith. Because I mean, I grew up Catholic, but I
Mm-hmm.
really latched on to the more humanist ideals of the religion and not so much the fantastical ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm kind of curious. Do you miss anything like about like all of that? Like, is there anything that you miss after leaving the faith? Is there anything that you miss about it?
There's a lot of things that I miss about it. I miss being able to have open conversations about my beliefs. I feel like even now where I'm at, I can't do that as much as an atheist, just because my beliefs aren't as, well accepted where I am now. And I miss being able to have conversations about, things that are, kind of beyond me, kind of a faith in kind of the mystical, that things are always going to work out in the end because there was a God who was watching out for me. I got a lot of happiness from that idea, and I got a lot of happiness from the idea that I was serving that God, and I got my sense of life, meaning, and purpose through that. That was kind of hard for me to kind of get back, when I started my deconversion process.
Okay. Now, I'm glad you brought up beliefs because I'm wondering exactly what kind of Baptist you were. Because, I mean, even Baptists, there's varying degrees of Baptists. I mean, you've got like the Stephen Anderson, fundamental Baptist, and then you got the more progressive kind of Baptist. So I'm kind of wondering which way your beliefs actually lie or laid, whatever.
Yes. So, like I said, I kind of went through different churches growing up. So I don't know if I could even accurately say what my doctrine of beliefs were at any given point in time for most of my growing up experience. Anyway, I kind of got different ideas from different places. By the end of my beliefs, when I was kind of starting the deconversion process, it was more of a gradual slide. So I kind of came into this more liberal Christianity. I thought like Soren Kierkegaard was really cool. So I called myself like a Christian existentialist for a minute. And then I at one point I identified under the label of Christian mystic with the idea of that, well, maybe the Bible's not true and all this and that's not true, but I can know God through my experiences with him and stuff. So yeah, it's kind of hard to say. I don't know if I could pin it down at any point of time, under which denomination I might have been.
Okay. Well, that's kind of interesting how you talk about gradually leaving the faith and you call yourself a Christian mystic. What I guess, and you might have covered this in your discussion with Anthony, but what really compelled you to go that extra mile and call yourself an atheist? Was there any one certain thing that did that?
I think I wanted to be justified in what I believed. I wanted to believe true things. And I wanted to have good reasons for believing what I believed. And when I realized that the reasons why I believed things before may not have been as substantial as I thought they were, I thought, well, it doesn't matter if this brings me comfort. I need to figure out what's real, because I don't want to be deluded. I don't want to be mistaken. So I think the kind of final nail in the coffin was, okay, so maybe this kind of more liberal Christianity that I was kind of a part of is nice, and maybe it does a lot for myself and for the people around me. But if it's not true, then it's not true. And I kind of had to figure that all out and piece it together. And when I just looked at, what was there as far as evidence for what I believed, it was lacking, in my opinion. So I had to give it up.
Okay. Yeah, no, I totally agree. There was a point where, I had to make that decision to call myself an atheist. And to be quite honest, that was the hardest hurdle that I had to get over, because like, to me, at least in the way I was feeling, was that it was wrong not to believe in God. Did you have any like really big hurdles that you had to overcome?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I definitely grew up with this idea of, like, the minute you say that God's not real, you're a heretic, you're sinning, you're destined for hell at that point. And really, it's the guys on YouTube, the people that I watched. At first I started watching like Armored Skeptic, Cosmic Skeptic as well. Let's see, who else was I watching? Dark Matter, 2525, Non-Stamp Collector. These guys who had kind of this voice that were willing to kind of criticize what I believed was not something that I was used to. And I was really kind of scared and also interested in that. I kind of wanted to hear what they had to say. And really just seeing other people kind of act out their atheism, if you will, kind of gave me the confidence to say, yeah, I have to agree, and kind of go against the cultural norms that I was surrounded by. Okay.
So now, after you started identifying as an atheist, like, what was the reaction of like friends and family?
Yeah, so I wasn't public about it at first, and I'm still not around certain people. In fact, a lot of people found out from my second interview with Anthony, and that was actually like one of the first times I ever came out to anyone. I don't think I had even come out to anyone before that video. So that got around. Basically, some people saw it and, sent it to other people. I got sent a lot of messages, phone calls, from people that I used to work with in my ministry, people I used to go to church with, and I got kind of the whole gambit. Some people were very nice and saying, good luck, you're going to find the truth, with the expectation that I'm going to be a Christian again. And some people were saying, Dan, you're going to go to hell if you keep doing this. So really, it was the whole spectrum that you can imagine the responses might be.
Yeah, I could just imagine being like, oh, okay, well, enjoy burning in hell there, buddy.
Yeah.
So what was, how did that make you feel, like getting, I guess, those really negative reactions? Because I guess the positive reactions would, kind of comfort you a little bit, but I'm wondering, like, how did you handle those negative reactions to it?
Oh, I honestly figured out who my friends are, the ones who were willing to stick with me after my deconversion are the ones that I still hang out with today, and who know who I am and respect me for what I believe. And in a way that was kind of good, because I'm not wasting my time with people who, aren't going to respect me in the first place. But it was really tough because that was a huge portion of my life that I dedicated to. And I'm not gonna get it back, and I can't just wallow around waiting on them to change their minds. I have to move on. They can come with me if they want to, but I can't force anybody to come to my worldview. The best I can do is street epistemology. So,
yeah, which I'm glad that you bring that up, because I'm wondering, like, how did you get into like street epistemology? I'm guessing that you got into it after you, I guess, deconverted out of faith. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I wanted to figure out what the heck did this guy do? What was he getting this kind of technique from? I'm talking about Anthony Magnabosco, of course. And I have a background in communication studies, so the method itself was already very interesting to me as far as how to talk to people about these kinds of beliefs that people who have these kinds of conversations usually end up going nowhere with. And Anthony was also one of the first people I actually ever met that was an atheist that didn't immediately turn me off as far as being angry or seeming like there was something off about them, and that's an unfortunate stereotype that a lot of us have to deal with, but unfortunately I think it's the case for some people. There's a lot of people who approach these topics with a lot of vitriol, and that's necessary. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that, but I am saying that there are contexts where that can and can't be appropriate, and I think that kind of intrigued me as well. I was like, oh, how can we have these conversations and actually be persuasive about it instead of just being polemic about it? So yeah, I started getting more involved after I talked to Anthony my second time, and I started studying it up more. I read Peter Boghossian's book, and now I'm part of some of the Facebook groups online, and I do the podcast. So it's been a pretty fun journey.
Yeah, and I think you just recently started the young Street Epistemologist group, right?
Yeah, I'm a co-admin of the Young Street Epistemologist Facebook group as well. So if you're college age, high school age, and you think that Street Epistemology is full of old people, fear not, we're here. We're trying to do this too. It's not just some boring old philosophical, whatever you call it. It's a new thing, and it's something that we should all be excited about.
I totally agree. And I don't think I'm part of the young person group because I'm a little bit too old for that shit. But
I can slide you in if you really want.
Oh yeah. But if anybody's watching, I'll have links down below where you can request to get in if you want to. I definitely suggest checking them out because, like I said, it really is productive in conversations. And I mean, I've really tried to start gearing my content to more of a street epistemology kind of view. I still got my jokes in there, but like for instance, I posted today, which for those of you in the future, this was in the past, but today I posted my response to a guy that made a response to me, and I really wasn't all that antagonistic towards it. I was more explaining things, but I also asked questions. And I mean, that's really what street epistemology is about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like a Zen meditation for me, almost. You kind of have to really enter a state of just neutral ideology. When I'm doing street epistemology, I'm not an atheist. I'm someone who's trying to figure out what's true and trying to figure out what the best method is to figuring out that truth. And that's kind of how I view these conversations. It's, okay, let's try to find this truth together. Help me figure out how you came to this belief, and what methods did you use, and can we demonstrate them to be reliable? And that's kind of really the power of the method. I think that anybody can really do it. I don't think you have to just be an atheist. And I'm certainly, I mean, if you become an atheist afterwards, that's great, but you can use it for more than just religious beliefs as well. We often talk about how we like to use it in political discussions, and just, all kinds of applications.
No, I totally agree. Have there been any conversations that you've had where they're just not productive, like either because of the subject matter or because of the person themselves?
Yeah. So I tried to use street epistemology on my parents.
Really?
Whenever I first kind of came out, and it didn't go very well at all. I think I kind of lost my cool at some point, and I'm not really proud of that. But I think when you do it with people that you know pretty well, at least at first, it's kind of hard because you have a lot of personal baggage with those people, right? You have a history with them that kind of clouds the way that you approach the subjects, and you start to get distracted and you kind of go on these rabbit trails and you're not really focused on the topic at hand. So yeah, that was one where I realized, maybe it's better to practice on strangers than it is to do it with people I like to think that I'm much better at it now, especially with conversations with them. But it's tough. It's not easy. It's something you have to practice at, for sure.
Oh, definitely. I mean, me personally, I've had to go through a lot of personal growth in order to have conversations where I don't fly off at the handle. Because like I had friends, like when I first became an atheist, a lot of my friends like to poke the bear a lot and just say a bunch of inflammatory things, which would get me really riled up, and they thought it was funny. And so like I've had to deal with that a lot too. So yeah, you're definitely not alone in that.
Yeah, and that's just going to happen, unfortunately. I think we kind of have to borrow this Christian concept of grace sometimes, and that's really hard because sometimes you don't feel like you owe them anything, right? It's like, it feels like the other way around. It feels like, oh, look at all this persecution and awful things that have happened to atheists over the years. But if they don't know the struggle, then they don't know. They just can't recognize that. And so you kind of just have to just be there, it's a difficult thing, but like you're kind of saying, with a bit of practice and with a bit of, self-reflection, it really is helpful for yourself as well as the person you're talking to.
Right. So I'm kind of curious, like, what would be the best advice that you could give, like, somebody that is in that state of questioning their faith? Like you were in after your talk with Anthony, and as you started your gradual slide, like, what would you say to a person that was kind of in that phase?
I wish I talked to people more about it. I wish I wasn't so scared. I think a lot of my time there was being in the closet about it, researching articles and YouTube videos and stuff when nobody was looking. And I think you'll find that more people are actually open to having those conversations than you might think. And I would also encourage not being afraid of asking people on both sides of the spectrum, atheist or Christian, what they believe. If there is a God and he is good, I think he'd want you to explore what you believe and kind of try to figure things out. I think he'd want you to believe for good reasons. So it's okay to be questioning. And I would tell that to my Christian friends as well. I don't think that that should be something that we should just turn our brains off to and just and never think about why we believe the things that we do.
Okay, awesome. Now, what's your best advice for like a new atheist that's just coming out of faith? And, they're kind of in that particular portion. What would you say to them?
Yeah, it's hard, you're going to get mad. You're going to get angry. I mean, everybody does, but if you want to be the better person and if you want other people, I always say this, it's one thing to be right. It's another thing to be persuasive. And I kind of feel like that's a problem on our side sometimes. Sometimes we're not afraid to tell people what's true and what's logical, but we're not always afraid to kind of we are afraid sometimes to kind of approach these emotional sides to these beliefs. We're used to, us that have deconverted, we're used to this kind of emotional rhetoric, and so we kind of try to avoid that because we don't want to be emotionally influenced, but at the same time we are human, and that's going to cloud us no matter what we do, even if we try to be as neutral as possible. So it's okay to engage in that kind of emotional dialogue sometimes, and kind of talk about how you feel about certain situations, and not just have to be rational and logical all the time. And I'm not saying give that up completely either. I would never ever say that, but I am saying embrace all of you. Don't isolate parts of you just because you don't feel comfortable about it anymore. It's okay. It's going to be okay.
No, I couldn't agree more.